Welcome to this Coco Coders coding tutorial where I'm going to guide you through creating a really cool jumping game. So let me demonstrate how it works. We start our game by pressing the green flag, and then I press my space key on my keyboard to jump over the obstacles that are coming my way. If I touch one, you can see I lose a life. And if I lose, then the game stops. The next step is to log yourself in if you've got a Scratch account, maybe from school you've got one. Or if you haven't, then you can sign yourself up by pressing Join Scratch. And then all you need is to have a username. And remember not to use your real name, so maybe you can pick your favourite animal and your favourite colour and then a number. That would be a good idea, and then a password that you can remember as well. Otherwise, if you've got one, then sign yourself in. Mine already has my details here, and then press sign in. Once you're here, yours will look a bit different because mine is a teacher account. You just press create. Okay, so once you've logged in, you can see you'll come to this page, and we can see that we've got all of our coding blocks down here. And they're sorted into colour-coded categories depending on what they do. And then over here we've got our sprites. So at the moment we've got Scratch the Cat, and we don't actually want this sprite in our game, so I'm going to press the delete button here. Next up, I'm going to pick a background for my game. So I'm going to press this button, and I'm going to pick blue sky. Then I'm going to put in two sprites by pressing this button. And I'm going to put in a dragon. And I'm going to put in a rock. So the dragon is my sprite that jumps, my main character, and my rock is my obstacle. So at the moment, both my dragon and my rock are quite large, so I'm going to change the size of my sprite. I'm going to try 40% for my dragon. Actually, he's a little small, so I'm going to make him 50. See what that looks like. And then for my rock, I'm going to try 40. And I think that's still a little small as well, so I'm going to do that at 50. So now I've got a small dragon and a small obstacle in my game. So I am ready to start coding these. First of all, I am going to code my rock. And what we want to do is right at the start, we are going to create a variable for this rock. Because what I want is I want it to move across the x-axis. So the x-axis goes from left to right, side to side, and the y goes up and down. And I want my obstacle to slowly move across on the x-axis. So I need to do that by using a variable that changes every few seconds. So I'm going to click on variable, and I'm going to press make a variable, and I'm going to call this xpos. So xpos stands for x position. Make sure that you've got for all sprites selected, and then press OK. So something we can see that's happened is that up here it's appeared in our game, and actually I don't need to see this in my game, so to get rid of it I just unclick over here and you can see that it's disappeared. So now what we want to do is we want to start this code running when we press the green flag. That's how a lot of games in Scratch start, and this one is no different. So I'm going to click and drag this block over, the one that says when green flag clicked. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the starting position for my rock. So I want it to gradually go across the screen like this, and when it reaches a certain point here, I want it to go back to the start and do the loop again, so that it looks like it's constantly moving towards us. To do that, I want to use this block here. This block will tell our obstacle, our rock, to go to a certain position when the green flag is clicked at the start of the game. For this, I'm going to put 350 in the X position, and for the Y, I'm going to do 129, and I'll see what that looks like. So I can see here that actually my rock is a little bit up from the ground, so I'm going to change that to be minus 130 and see what that looks like. Still needs to be a bit more, 140. That's a bit better. So mine is 350 in the Y position, in the X position, sorry, and Y is minus 140. Okay, so now what I want to do is I also want to set my X position to be 0. And that was my variable. So here we can see it says my variable, and I want to change that to be X position. And I'm going to keep that at 0. Now what I want to do is tell the computer to be, when we press play, I want this to always be moving. So what I can do is I can use my variable to do this. So I'm going to go to motion, and I want to use this block here that says change X by 10. And I'm going to put that in my forever loop. Now, instead of 10, I'm going to use this little block here. This will make a little bit more sense in just a second when we put in our next block of code. If you haven't finished doing this, pause the video and complete it now. If you have completed it, I am about to move on. So we're going to go to events. We're going to use another when green flag clicked block. We're going to use another forever block. And what we're going to do now is we're going to make the X position variable decrease by -1 every 0.1 seconds. So I want to use this block here. I'm going to change that to X position. I'm also going to change that to -1 because actually to move across the screen, we need it to reduce by 1 every 0.1 seconds. So this is why this is a negative, is because moving across this way would make the X reduce. If I went this way, it would increase. So I'm going to go to control to use my delay, my wait block, and here I'm going to put 0.1. If you want, at any point you want your game to be slower, you can increase this number here. Or if you want it to be faster, it's not quite going to be possible. So now when I press the green flag, you can see the block is moving across. But at the moment, it only does it once. We will fix that later in our project. So now we are going to move on to our dragon. When we have clicked on our dragon, and we can code our dragon by clicking on it here, we're going to create 2 more variables. So I'm going to go to variables again and do the same thing that I did before. I'm going to make one variable called lives, and I'm going to make another variable called obstacles jumped. So this will count how many times I manage to jump over the obstacle when I'm playing my game. Now, at the moment, if I press play, you can see that the obstacle just goes through my dragon, and there's actually no way at the moment that I can move this dragon out of the way of the obstacle. So let's change that. I'm going to use this block here that says when space key pressed. You can change this to be whatever you like. If you click on this button, you can have your jump happen with whatever key you like. I'm going to have space just because it's a nice big key on my keyboard. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the height of my jump. So to do that, I want to change the Y position of my dragon. So I'm going to find this block here that says change Y by 10. But instead of 10, I need this to be more like 150. Then, once it's jumped up, so it'll be up here, I need it to wait for about half a second and then return down. So it looks like the dragon's jumping up and then jumping down. So I'm going to use another one of my wait blocks. I'm going to change that to about 0.6. I'm going to go to motion, and just as my dragon went up, I need my dragon to come down again. So I'm going to put minus 150 here. So let's test this out. Now when I press the green flag and then press the space key on my keyboard, my dragon should jump up and then return down. So now our dragon can jump up and down. We want to make sure that our obstacle sprite repeats its motion. So as we saw, it only does it once, and actually I want it to do it a few times. So we're going to add a bit more code to our obstacle sprite. And I'm going to kick this code off when the green flag is clicked. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of the variables that I created. So I'm going to have set lives to 0, but actually I want it to be set obstacle jumped to 0, because when we start the game we won't have jumped over any obstacles. Then I want to make something happen when the obstacle reaches this position that it's in now. So it means that I've jumped over it, the dragon's jumped over it, and it's reached this position. So I don't want this to always happen. I only want it to happen when it reaches this position here. To do that, I need to use an if-then conditional statement. So I'm trying to look for the X position of my obstacle. So I'm going to go to operators. I'm going to use this one here that's got the equal sign, and I'm going to drag it over. And when it turns white, when it makes the diamond white, I will drop it. Now I need to find my xpos variable, which I'm going to put in this first gap here. And I'm going to change this to minus 15. I'm also going to make sure that when I have jumped over an obstacle, that my points go up. So I'm going to use this block here. And I'm going to put obstacles jumped, because if it reaches this point, it means that I have managed to jump over the obstacle, which will make this go up. Next, I'm going to go to motion, and I'm going to reset where it starts. So we know the starting position of our obstacle because it's here. So I just need to use this block, and I need to use the same numbers that I've got up there. So 350 and minus 140. Something else we can do is make the obstacle change. So at the moment it's just a rock. But if I click on costumes, I can actually make the obstacle change. So I click on this button here, and I could have a building. I could have an apple. And one more perhaps, a birthday cake. Okay, so now we can use the block that says next costume to make it appear like the obstacle is changing. We also want to set the X position variable back to 0, because we almost want to do this again. So we want to make it look like it's starting at the beginning again. So now when I press, you can see that each time, oh, my building's a little bit far down. You can see that each time the obstacle is changing and moving. I'm going to get rid of my building because it's in the wrong place, and I'm just going to keep these 3. You can have as many as you like. It will go through all of them and then go back to the start. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is make it so that when we hit the obstacle, when we touch the obstacle, we actually lose a life. So again, we are going to add to our dragon sprite. We're going to use a when green flag clicked block. We're going to make sure our dragon starts in the right place. And you'll actually find that if you use this block, it's already set to the position that the dragon is now. So that's a convenient thing in Scratch. Now what we're going to do is we're going to set our lives. So at the moment we start with 0 lives, which isn't very good. So I'm going to set that to 3. You can have more if you like, or less, to make it more difficult. Now what we want is we want to be looking for if the dragon touches the obstacle. And we always want to be looking for that. So we need to use this forever loop. And we also need to put in 2 of these if then conditional statements. So just as we discussed before, this code won't always run. It's only going to run if something happens. So the first one, this code that we put in here is only going to run if the dragon touches the obstacle. And then the second one we're going to do is this code is only going to run if we reach 0 lives. So to make sure that happens, we want to go to sensing, and we want to use this top one here that says touching. Now instead of mouse pointer, I'm going to change that to rocks, because that is what I'm looking out for. If I touch my rock, which is an apple at the moment, then something will happen. What will happen? We actually want to lose a life if we touch it. So we're going to use this block here, and we're going to change that to -1. And then we also want to have a delay, because we don't want to lose hundreds of lives. We only want to lose 1. And sometimes it can take a little while for the obstacle to move past the dragon or your sprite, which means that you might actually lose multiple lives rather than just 1 if we don't put a delay in. So a quick way to rectify that is to put a delay block in, a wait block, and I'm going to change that to 0.3. Now we're going to add to this conditional statement. So this one was only going to run if we lose all our lives. So we go to operators, we use this block here again, and this one we're going to put at 0, because we want the game, something to happen when we lose all our lives. And then we are going to use our variable block, lives one, and we're going to put it in here. So if lives, which is here, equals 0, then we want the game to end. So we go to control, and then we're looking for this block here that says stop all, and that will just stop the game from happening. So now we've got all of our code. Let's see how it works. So I'm going to make mine full screen. I'm going to press the green flag, and I can jump over my obstacles, and you can see that my lives are at 3 and the number of obstacles that I'm jumping over is going up. So things that you can do to make this harder, you could perhaps have 2 obstacle sprites. So just adding the same code in for both of them. You could also start with fewer lives. You could make the length of time that the dragon is in the air, so that weight block, you could reduce that to make it harder. You could also have a timer in there and challenge your friends and family to play with you. So I hope you have a great time playing your game. And if you have any questions about it, or if your code isn't working, then make sure you spend the time looking at your code, go back through the video, see if there's any areas where your code is different, and try and read through your code as well. So sometimes it's good to vocalize what your code is doing. So for example, with this one here, I can say that when green flag is clicked, so when the game begins, I want my dragon to go to this position. Then I want the lives to be set to 3 because that's how many lives I want. I'm going to put in a forever loop because I want this code to happen forever. And then you want to run through these as well and just read them out loud and make them into sentences and see if it works. Debugging your code is a really important part of learning how to code. And if you're interested in doing any more coding, then visit our website, which is cococoders.com, and you can book yourself a free lesson, or you can also sign up for a weekly lesson with one of our awesome Coco Coders teachers. So I hope you've enjoyed today, and I hope you have created an awesome game for you and your family to play.